Hello everyone and welcome back. Now up to this point in the lecture series, we have focused on one-dimensional dynamical systems. We did them on the real line, or at least subsets thereof, or on the circle, but everything was in one dimension. Now, that is for a very good reason. One-dimensional systems are fairly well understood from the mathematical perspective. We have fairly unified theories, primarily developed by people like John Milnor, who has his kneading theories and his theories of piecewise linear maps. Now, what I would like to do for the remainder of this lecture series is explore the Wild West, right? Look at the places where it isn't as understood. And what we're going to do today in this lecture series is look at linear maps in Rn, primarily 2 and 3 dimensions, because that will allow us to at least sketch things out as we go forward, but everything we talk about can be applied to any number of dimensions here. Then we will proceed through the selected topics in higher dimensional dynamical systems. In the next video, we'll talk about the horseshoe map. After that, we'll talk about torus automorphisms. And it's going to be exciting, but it's also going to bring us closer to the frontier of knowledge, because there is, as I said, a more scattered literature for higher dimensional dynamical systems. So what we'd like to do in this lecture is understand just linear transformations. And linear transformations are going to be given by matrices, right? So you took a linear algebra class probably before this. In our case, we're going to talk about linear transformations, say, I'm going to call it L of x. And this is just going to be shorthand for multiplying a vector x in some dimension by a matrix L, right? Okay, so then let's take a look at an example. Here's my example. Really simple, okay? L of x is 2, 0, 0, 1/2 x. And here x is a two-dimensional vector. Well, we can think about what happens here, right? This thing diagonalizes. If you'd like to break this up into x and y coordinates, what happens is as you apply this linear mapping over and over, treating it like a dynamical system, taking compositions, right, which is just multiplying the matrix over and over, you are going to stretch yourself in the x direction by 2 times whatever you were, and you are going to compress yourself in the y direction by 1/2 of whatever you were, right? So what happens as n goes on, you contract in the vertical direction and you expand in the horizontal direction. Now, you can also take a look here. You can see that the determinant of this matrix is exactly 1. So what that tells you is that it's volume preserving, right? So for example, if I start with a circle centered at 0 in the plane, this thing is going to expand it outwards in this direction, and it's going to contract it in the vertical direction. So you might get sort of an oblong circle, right? It's going to be twice as wide and half as short, but it's still going to have the same area, okay? So again, these are things we learned in linear algebra, hopefully, but at least now here we can sort of connect these things up a little bit with dynamical systems. We could alternatively think about this one. Maybe let's put this as L2. I'll call that L1 just so we can differentiate them. 2, 0, 0, minus 1/2 x. So effectively, this is doing the same thing as the previous map. It's expanding me in the x direction and compressing me in the y direction. The only difference now is that it's also flipping me, okay? So for example, maybe let's think about this. Maybe I have a triangle centered at 0, for example. Then what would happen after applying L to this thing is it would flip upside down and it would get stretched. All right, so maybe here's 0 again. Not to scale in this case. The determinant is -1, so it's still a volume preserving, but it's flipping you. Okay, so then let's look at another example, just so we can really sort of understand what's happening here. And then I'll give you some sort of unified theories. So here's what I have: 0, 1/2, minus 1/2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and 2, okay? So this thing is a block diagonal matrix, right? So you basically have, if we take a look at this, We have the upper portion and we have the lower portion. What happens in the third coordinate? Sorry, I forgot the x here, right? What happens in the third direction? Well, you're just getting doubled, right? So it's expansion by a factor of 2. Then the question is, what is happening in this direction? Well, if we just isolate that matrix, so let's just take a look at this, sort of sketch it out for ourselves. All right, if I multiply this by, say, x, y, a sort of two-dimensional vector, what happens here is that I get y over 2, and I get minus x over 2. Okay? So what happened here? Well, what happened is, okay, so I scale the vector by 1/2 every single step, right? So the distance from the origin is scaling down. But also, I am flipping the x and y coordinates. In fact, what this is doing is a 90-degree turn of the vector while also compressing it by half the length. So for example, if you start on the x-axis like this, one application of this thing will give you a half-length vector that is rotated up by pi over 2, or 90 degrees, if you prefer to use degrees. Okay? So let's give ourselves a definition. And again, we're going to carry a lot of this theory through. So let's talk about a definition here. So we're going to say an invertible linear map. So in our case, we're thinking about invertible as not having a 0 eigenvalue. I mean, that is the definition from the rank nullity theorem. But an invertible linear map is hyperbolic. So if you've been around my videos for a while, you've seen me talk about hyperbolicity in many different contexts. We are just putting it into the range of these linear mappings now. So if none of the eigenvalues lie on the unit circle in the complex plane. So another way to say that is no eigenvalues have unit modulus, absolute value equal to 1, okay? So what this really means is, okay, the invertibility, there's no 0 eigenvalue either, and effectively the eigenvalues inside of the unit circle are contracting you because you take powers of them, they go to 0. Whereas the eigenvalues outside of the unit circle are expanding you. Outside the unit circle, inside the unit circle, okay? So then what we could say, we could give this little proposition, sort of further justifying what I just said. We could say, let's say, suppose a linear operation, right? So just a matrix from Rn into Rn has all eigenvalues with absolute value less than 1, then the successive powers of this thing go to 0 as k goes to infinity for all x in Rn. So effectively, that's saying that you have a contracting map, right? It is contracting in every single direction in this case. And that means that you are collapsing into 0, okay? So an example of this would be 1/2 and minus 1/2, right? Now, you can prove this by using an eigenvalue or an eigenvector expansion for your matrix L that defines your linear map. However, unfortunately, not every matrix has algebraic multiplicity equal to geometric multiplicity. So the most general version of this proof is going to require generalized eigenvectors. But you can still, if you know what generalized eigenvectors are, then you can easily do an expansion in the eigenvectors and generalized eigenvectors, and then you can show that this is going to be true because the successive operations of this on the span of the eigenvectors is just going to produce powers of the eigenvalues, which, because they have absolute value less than 1, will go to 0. Okay? try and do it. Just assume the matrix is invertible. Sorry, not invertible, diagonalizable, and then you'll see exactly how this works. And then you can do it in more generality using, say, like the Jordan normal form. Now, here's what we really want to say, though. Okay, so we want to introduce a definition first. So a definition. We're going to say that WS, okay, WS of, in this case, it's going to be of 0, but it won't really matter because that's the only fixed point that we're interested in these cases. WS is the set of all x in Rn such that L of x goes to 0, sorry, Lk of x, as k goes to infinity. And we call this thing the stable subspace. I'm going to leave it for you to prove that this is actually a subspace. I think that's a nice little exercise in linear algebra. And similarly, I'm going to introduce this notation. So this is something, sort of an abstraction of something we already saw as well with our linear, with our nonlinear one-dimensional maps. In this case, sorry, as we go backwards in time, we go to 0 as k goes to infinity. So these are the inversions, assuming that we have an invertible map. As we go to 0, we call this the unstable subspace. And here's a nice little result that we can give ourselves, okay? So we can say, sorry, when you want to, we can call this a proposition as well, I think. A proposition that will say if L has, let's say, n1 eigenvalues inside the unit circle, and n2 eigenvalues outside, then the stable space is n1 dimensional, and the unstable space is n2 dimensional. So again, here I'm assuming n1 plus n2 is at most n. There could be this could be a non-hyperbolic invertible or a linear system, in which case you could have you know, what we would call the center space, which are the eigenvalues that lie on the unit circle. But here I'm saying that with this definition of stable and unstable spaces, assuming that you have a linear or an invertible linear map, you can say that if you have n1 eigenvalues inside the unit circle, so let's say like this, and then you have n2 eigenvalues maybe outside, maybe something like this, then for each one of those eigenvalues, you have a dimension of your stable and unstable spaces, okay? And again, this is really kind of just looking a lot like the proof of this result right here, where you're just doing these general eigenfunction expansions, or sorry, these eigenvector expansions, not even functions, right? So it's a little simpler for us. But let me give you an example to sort of round this out. Here's my L of x. I've got 2, 1, 1, 1, x. Okay, this thing has eigenvalues. So eigenvalues. Well, the first one is given by 3/2 and then plus the square root of 5 over 2, which is bigger than 0. Sorry, bigger than 1, pardon me. I'm used to doing this in continuous time. And then the other one is between 0 and 1, which is 3/2 minus the square root of 5 over 2, which is positive, okay? So effectively, here, the stable space, the unstable space is one-dimensional, coming from this eigenvalue, and the stable space is also one-dimensional, coming from that eigenvalue. This is a hyperbolic matrix. It's invertible. It has a one-dimensional stable subspace and a one-dimensional unstable subspace, okay? Now, this is a relatively simple theory, right? But it turns out through very important critical results that we will continue to explore, such as maybe the Hartman-Grobman theorem, that a complete and total understanding of these linear dynamical systems in higher dimensions can lend itself at least to a local understanding of nonlinear dynamical systems around fixed points. Okay, so we will see results like the stable manifold theorem that generalize these ideas of stable and unstable subspaces. We will see these local linearization techniques like the Hartman-Grobman theorem as we progress through this thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to step up the complexity in not the next video, but the one after that, where we start looking at these things not on Rn, but on the torus, where even these linear mappings become insanely complicated, as you're going to see. So stay tuned. But here now we have a nice overview. We all have a nice base to start with. In the next video, I'm going to tell you about Smale's horseshoe.